Before I turned the ignition, my thoughts, a relentless tide, pull me back to that summer's night, the silent overture to my undoing. It wasn't just a night. It was the threshold, the moment before the fall, a deceptive calm before the storm that would rage for years. She'd said, her voice soft, but still it echoes in the hollows of my memory. I didn't come here for the party. Her eyes, luminous even in the dim light, held a glint of something unreadable. Half kiddingly, she'd added, though the half that wasn't kidding resonated with an unsettling truth. I came for you. I remembered the genuine bewilderment in my own voice as I asked, "Why me?" And her answer, delivered with an unsettling calm that belied its future impact. "It's your eyes. All the things I see in them." "What do you see?" I pressed, a desperate plea for understanding I didn't yet know I needed. She took a slow, deliberate drag from her cigarette, the cherry glowing like a malevolent eye in the encroaching darkness. The brief silence stretched, heavy with unspoken promise and unrevealed threat. Her response, when it came, was etched into my memory as if spoken moments ago, each word a brand on my consciousness, a sense of calm and a weariness. Like you're tired of running, ready to face what you must, but you don't want to face it alone. I went to her then, drawn by an invisible, irresistible force, a moth to a destructive flame. Even in that intoxicating moment, a part of me, a deep, primitive instinct, knew the wrong she would inflict. Yet I clung to the sliver of right, the disillusioned hope that perhaps, just perhaps, if I could turn the other way, I might find salvation. I grasped desperately for any fragment of that imagined good, but now, the brutal truth of what is and always will be consumes me. I told her, again and again, in moments of desperate tenderness and crushing despair, that it was all my fault. A lie designed to shield, to placate, to carry the burden she refused to acknowledge. I told her it would be okay. A lie I told myself, a fragile shield against the encroaching dread. I would hold her close, knowing with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that she would never truly understand the depths of my torment or her role in it. Even then, in those early days, the shame ignited within me, a fire that now burns through every fiber of my being. It has consumed my heart, leaving only desolation in its wake. My life had become a pandemonium, a chaotic maelstrom of regret and anguish. It is my perdition, an endless abyss of incomprehensible pain that no words can truly capture. I could never have foreseen the true extent of that encounter's insidious grasp on me, nor the winding, ruinous path it would ultimately pave. It wasn't just an encounter, it was a catalyst, a single point in time that fractured my world and set me on a course of profound suffering. I'm no angel, no saint, no Mother Teresa. I'm nothing. And if I had known then what I know now, what is and always will be, 6 years earlier, if I had been granted that foresight, I might still have myself. I might have avoided the complete erosion of my spirit, the shattering of my very being. Those 6 odd years that followed, a relentless barrage of hammering abuse, searing embarrassment, paralyzing terror, profound loss, and gut-wrenching betrayal, warped me beyond recognition. They became a constant thorn in my side, a deeply embedded shard of agony that festers with every breath. My very own affliction of incomprehensible pain, a constant companion that whispers its torments in the darkest hours. I replay that night in my mind, like a broken film reel, her slow smile, a smirk that held no warmth, only a chilling indifference. Her unwavering refusal to empathize, a stark testament to the void within her. And the one loose end I failed to tie, the critical error that sealed my fate. A young man, me, still out there somewhere, helpless in the hands of a drooling lunatic. A victim bound by unseen chains, destined to endure. It was all a grand facade of what would never be. The promise of redemption, the hope of a shared future, all shattered by the cruel reality of her nature. That night, in a desperate attempt to believe in a better outcome, I told her everything would be all right. that I'd save her, take her far, far away from whatever darkness she believed pursued her. I told her I loved her. But I lied to myself again, a lie that echoes with bitter irony now. The most searing pain, the most profound regret, is that I didn't just leave. That I didn't simply turn and walk away, allowing her to hear nothing but the fading echoes of my own retreating footsteps. The past is a phantom limb, always there, an ache that no amount of present-day peace can soothe. My past, in particular, was a mangled mess, a twisted knot of betrayal and terror that I carried everywhere. My ex-wife had made sure of that. Our marriage wasn't just abusive, it was a war. She tried to kill me, not once but multiple times. She drained my bank accounts, forged documents, and landed me in jail 5 times on trumped-up charges. Each time, I walked out a little more broken, a little more convinced that I'd never escape her shadow. When it was finally over, I was a husk, a man stripped of everything he owned, every ounce of trust he held. I moved, of course, countless times, chasing some elusive sense of normalcy, a quiet corner where her ghost couldn't find me. But no matter where I went, the memories clung to me like a shroud. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, convinced she was in the room, her icy fingers around my throat, the scent of her sickly sweet perfume choking me even in my dreams. During the day, mundane things, a certain scent, a turn of phrase, a woman's laugh, would trigger a flashback, sending me spiraling into the abyss of what she had done to me. Even the simplest act of filling out a form, of writing my name, would bring back the cold dread of signing over another asset, another piece of my soul, under her manipulative gaze. My only escape, my only true solace, had always been time travel. Not in reality, of course, but in the pages of books and on the silver screen. Back to the Future was more than just a movie to me. It was a blueprint for an impossible dream, a whispered promise that some things, even the fabric of time, could be altered. The idea of going back, of altering the past, even if it was just for Marty McFly, offered a perverse comfort. If only I could go back and change my own history, erase the years I lost, those years where I was merely a pawn in her cruel game. The thought was a dangerous one, a siren song that beckoned me, but I couldn't resist its allure. I was aimlessly driving one Saturday, somewhere on the outskirts of Rochester, New York, when I saw it. A glint of brushed stainless steel in the corner of a dusty used car lot, shimmering under the early afternoon sun. A DeLorean. It was like fate, a ridiculous, improbable twist of fate, a cosmic joke that somehow felt like a lifeline. I pulled in, my hands trembling on the wheel, the gravel crunching under my tires like a prelude to something monumental.
Well, son, considering the low mileage and its iconic nature, I'd let her go for 20.
The salesman, a wiry guy with a greasy comb-over and a practiced smile, eyed me shrewdly, as if trying to gauge the depth of my desperation. "Would you do 18?" I countered, trying to sound casual, to hide the tremor in my voice, but I knew it was tight with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Hope, desperation, a wild, reckless hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this was the beginning of my true escape.
All right, let's meet somewhere in the middle. How's 19? We have a deal.
He pushed back, his eyes glinting with the thrill of the negotiation. "You got a deal." The words tumbled out, a quiet exclamation of surrender and triumph. That's how I acquired a DeLorean. It wasn't just a car. It was a vessel, a symbol of everything I craved. Control, a second chance, a way out of the torment. With my scientific background, multiple degrees in physics and engineering, gathering dust in a box somewhere, remnants of a life I'd thought was long dead, I knew what I had to do. The blueprints were already forming in my mind, coalescing with terrifying clarity. The flux capacitor, the plutonium chamber, the temporal displacement circuits. Every component, every theoretical hurdle, suddenly seemed within reach. I knew it was crazy, that it was probably a fool's errand, a descent into madness fueled by my own trauma. But what did I have to lose? My past had already taken everything else, leaving me with nothing but the burning desire to rewrite my own history, to finally, truly, escape. The ghosts of my past still clung to me, but now, for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something new, purpose. The first step was clearing out the garage. It was a 2-car detached unit behind the small, slightly dilapidated house I'd rented outside of Rochester. For years, it had been a graveyard of forgotten ambitions, dusty moving boxes I'd never fully unpacked, a rusted lawnmower, and the ghosts of hobbies I'd abandoned. But now, it was to be my sanctuary, my workshop, my gateway to a different time. I hauled everything out, creating a chaotic pile on the overgrown lawn. The DeLorean, gleaming even under a fine layer of dust, was carefully maneuvered inside, its gull-wing doors giving it the appearance of a grounded metallic bird. The blueprint of escape, my old physics textbooks, retrieved from a moldy box marked "Do Not Open," became my new Bibles. I spread them out on a makeshift workbench, their familiar equations a comforting language after years of silence. Einstein's theory of relativity, quantum mechanics, the intricate dance of space-time, concepts that once felt purely academic, now thrummed with a terrifying, exhilarating practicality. I started with the basics, sketching diagrams, calculating power requirements, and trying to reconcile the fantastical elements of fiction with the harsh realities of scientific principles. The flux capacitor was the obvious starting point, the iconic heart of any time machine. I knew logically it wasn't a real device, but the concept of a focal point for temporal displacement resonated. My version wouldn't glow with 3 blinking lights, but it would be the central processing unit, orchestrating the energy required to tear a hole in the fabric of time. I spent weeks, then months, hunched over my workbench, soldering intricate circuits, programming microcontrollers, and meticulously wiring components. My hands, once clumsy with grief, now moved with a focused precision I hadn't felt in years. Finding the right components was a nightmare. I couldn't just order temporal displacement coils from Amazon. This required ingenuity, patience, and a willingness to bend the rules. I frequented salvage yards, scouring through mountains of discarded electronics, looking for rare earth magnets, specialized superconductors, and high-energy capacitors that could handle the immense power I envisioned. I learned to talk my way into industrial surplus sales, charming bewildered clerks with tales of elaborate art installations that required specific, often obscure, electrical parts. Every purchase was a gamble, a hopeful step towards an impossible goal. One particularly memorable score came from a defunct research lab auction. Amidst dusty microscopes and forgotten beakers, I found a series of high-voltage power converters that looked suspiciously similar to schematics I'd seen for experimental particle accelerators. It wasn't just about building a machine. It was about reclaiming a part of myself. Then there was the power source. In the movies, it was plutonium. In my reality, it had to be something more attainable, yet still incredibly potent. I delved into the world of zero-point energy and theoretical clean fusion. While true cold fusion remained elusive, I theorized a highly efficient, closed-loop energy system that could, in theory, generate enough localized power to briefly manipulate space-time. It was dangerous, bordering on reckless, but the alternative was continued paralysis. As the DeLorean slowly transformed, its sleek interior giving way to a spaghetti of wires, blinking lights, and humming machinery, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in years: hope. It was a fragile, tentative thing, easily shattered by a stray memory or a sudden wave of panic, but it was there. Each successful test, each component that hummed to life, was a small victory against the ghosts of my past. The DeLorean, no longer just a car, was a monstrous, beautiful hybrid of metal and impossible dreams. Its interior was a maze of flickering LED displays, glowing conduits, and a hum that vibrated through the concrete floor. The exterior, still sleek and silver, was now adorned with an intricate array of coils and specialized plating designed to manage the immense temporal displacement field I hoped to generate. My first tests were purely theoretical, running simulations on my aging laptop, which groaned under the strain of complex algorithms. I was trying to predict the precise energy output, the spatial coordinates, and the potential temporal drift. Each simulation brought new challenges, new variables to account for. The biggest hurdle, I quickly realized, wasn't just generating the energy, but controlling it, directing it with pinpoint accuracy. The last thing I wanted was to end up in the Cretaceous period or worse, inside a brick wall. Phase 1, powering up, the initial live tests were terrifying. I started small, just engaging the power core. The lead shielding I'd painstakingly installed barely contained the low thrum that emanated from the zero-point energy containment unit. The garage lights flickered, a faint ozone smell filled the air, and my hair stood on end. I used a thick insulated glove to press the activation button, half expecting an explosion. Instead, a deep, resonant hum filled the space, growing steadily louder. The numerous gauges I'd installed on the dashboard danced wildly, indicating massive energy fluctuations. My goal for Phase 1 was simple: maintain a stable energy field for at least 10 seconds. The first few attempts ended in catastrophic shutdowns, loud bangs that sent sparks flying and left the garage smelling of burnt electronics. Each failure was a punch to the gut, a reminder of the monumental odds against me. But then, after weeks of tweaking the plasma containment protocols and recalibrating the magnetic field generators, I had a breakthrough. The hum smoothed out, the gauges steadied, and a faint, almost ethereal blue light pulsed from the coils integrated into the DeLorean's chassis. 10 seconds became 20, then a minute. I was generating something. Phase 2, temporal field generation. This was where the flux capacitor came into play. My design wasn't just 3 blinking lights. It was a complex series of nested electromagnetic coils and a highly specialized crystal array designed to bend and distort localized space-time. I hooked it into the main power conduit. This was the moment of truth. I engaged the power. The hum intensified, reaching a high-pitched whine that vibrated through my bones. The blue light from the coils brightened, becoming almost blinding. Then the most incredible thing happened. The air around the DeLorean began to shimmer, distorting like heat haze on a summer road. Objects just outside the car's immediate vicinity appeared to warp slightly, their edges blurring. I held a small, cheap digital clock up to the windshield. Its display, usually a steady string of numbers, flickered erratically, briefly skipping forward by a few milliseconds, then jumping back. It wasn't time travel yet, not in the way I envisioned, but it was undeniable evidence of temporal distortion. I was actually affecting time. This phase was fraught with danger. The energy fluctuations were immense, threatening to rip the car apart, or, more likely, fry every circuit. I had to learn to fine-tune the energy output, to find the sweet spot where the temporal field was stable but not destructive. There were close calls. Once, a stray energy surge caused a nearby light bulb to explode, showering me with glass. Another time, the air pressure inside the garage dropped sharply, causing my ears to pop painfully. But with each near disaster, I learned, I adapted, pushing the boundaries of what I thought was possible. Phase 3, the 88 MPH Conundrum. The 88 MPH wasn't just a movie trope. In my theoretical framework, it represented a critical velocity required to achieve complete temporal disengagement from the present space-time continuum. It wasn't about simply accelerating to that speed, but about maintaining it while the temporal field was fully active. This was the ultimate test of the system's stability and my own engineering prowess. I couldn't just drive the DeLorean down the street, not with a temporal distortion field actively wrapping around it. So, I built a specialized dynamometer, essentially a massive treadmill for the car, capable of handling the immense torque and allowing the wheels to spin at the equivalent of 88 while the car remained stationary. The first few runs were anticlimactic, ending in system overloads. The sheer power required to maintain the temporal field and propel the car to that equivalent speed was immense. I iterated on my power core design, adding more redundant systems and improving the energy transfer efficiency. I started introducing small, inanimate objects into the car's immediate temporal field during these high-speed runs. A single-page calendar, a small battery-operated toy car. When the tests were successful, the objects would appear to briefly vanish from sight, only to reappear a fraction of a second later, sometimes slightly displaced, or with a faint, almost imperceptible sheen of temporal energy. The ultimate test for this phase involved a precisely calibrated, highly sensitive atomic clock placed inside the passenger compartment. My goal was to see, with the field fully active, the atomic clock would show a measurable deviation from a control clock outside the garage. The moment came. I climbed into the driver's seat, the familiar leather of the DeLorean feeling strangely alien beneath my hands, surrounded by a universe of wires and monitors. I engaged the power, the hum rising to a deafening roar. The blue light was blinding now, filling the garage with an otherworldly glow. I pressed the accelerator. The tires shrieked on the dynamometer, the car vibrating violently. As the speedometer needle edged towards 88, the temporal field surged, the air around the DeLorean rippling intensely. I watched the atomic clock inside the car. For a fleeting instant, its readout froze, then jumped forward by 0.01 seconds. An infinitesimally small jump, but a jump nonetheless. It was microscopic, yes, but it was there. I had created a measurable, controlled temporal displacement. The hair on my arm stood on end, not just from the residual energy, but from a profound, terrifying, and exhilarating realization. I was almost there. A cold whisper in the back of my mind, but for the first time, I felt a tremor of control. I was taking back my time, one infinitesimally small second at a time. The real test, the actual jump into the past, awaited. My successful temporal displacement of a single picosecond, while infinitesimally small, was all the proof I needed. It was a tremor in the fabric of time, a whispered promise of possibilities. The primal fear of failure, of blowing myself and the DeLorean into a million pieces, was still a cold, hard knot in my stomach, but it was overshadowed by a burning, all-consuming urgency. A constant, malevolent presence in my waking and sleeping hours fueled my every calculation, every soldered connection. I had to go back. I had to fix it. The leap of faith, I dedicated an entire day to the final preparations, meticulously checking every electrical connection, recalibrating every sensor with obsessive precision. The sensitive atomic clock, my ultimate arbiter of success, was secured firmly on the dashboard, its digital readout a stark reminder of the exactitude required for this impossible feat. I had calculated the precise temporal coordinates for my destination, inputting them into the custom-built console, with a reverence usually reserved for sacred texts. My hands, surprisingly steady despite the magnitude of the moment, flew over the controls, first engaging the power core, then the temporal field generators. The garage filled with that now familiar, escalating whine, the ominous blue light from the coils intensifying to an almost blinding, otherworldly glow. Climbing into the driver's seat, I took a deep, shuddering breath. The DeLorean's familiar, luxurious cabin was now transformed into a futuristic cockpit, pulsating with a life of its own, a labyrinth of wires, blinking lights, and humming machinery. I strapped myself into the seat, the worn leather creaking softly under the added weight of the temporal displacement unit and my own trembling anticipation. I cast one last lingering look around my garage in 2025, a place that had, for months, been my solitary universe, a testament to my singular, consuming obsession. It felt like a farewell to the last vestige of the life I knew. "Here we go," I whispered, my voice a dry, reedy rasp, barely audible over the rising hum. I slammed the accelerator to the floor. The tires shrieked on the dynamometer, protesting against the sudden surge of power, the car vibrating violently as it reached the critical 88 mph. The temporal field around the DeLorean intensified dramatically, the air shimmering and distorting with an almost liquid force. The garage walls, the familiar tools on my workbench, even the very air itself seemed to melt and stretch, blurring into streaks of incandescent light. The sound escalated to a deafening, all-encompassing roar, a sound that felt less like an engine and more like the universe itself tearing apart at the seams, a cosmic canvas being ripped asunder. There was a sudden sickening lurch, a sensation of being stretched and squeezed, as if every atom in my body were being pulled in 1,000 opposing directions simultaneously. Colors exploded behind my eyelids, first a blinding, infinite white, then kaleidoscopic patterns of impossible hues, followed by a sudden, jarring pop. It was akin to a violent rebirth, a brutal expulsion from one reality, and an immediate disorienting thrust into another. Then an abrupt, profound silence. The blinding light vanished, replaced by the mundane glow of a single bare bulb dangling from a high ceiling. The cacophony of the time displacement unit was gone, replaced by the faint, rhythmic dripping of water somewhere nearby. The oppressive sensation of being torn apart dissipated, leaving behind a profound disorientation and a lingering ache in every joint. I felt a dizzying wave of nausea wash over me, and my stomach lurched. This is heavy. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the unfamiliar dimness. The DeLorean was no longer in my garage. Instead, I was in what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. Were my calculations off? It was colder than my garage. My gaze snapped to the dashboard. The atomic clock, my lifeline, was no longer displaying the current time. It read August 14th, 2009, 11:37 p.m. It worked. It actually worked. I had done it. I had traveled back to the night before I met, well, her. The relief that flooded me was so intense, so overwhelming it almost buckled me. Tears pricked at my eyes, a hot cleansing wave after years of arid despair. I slumped back in the seat, the worn leather suddenly feeling impossibly soft. A tangible reminder of the journey I'd just made. The phantom ache in my limb, the ghost of her torment, still lingered. But now, for the first time, it felt distant, almost manageable. I was here. I had a chance. But with the elation came a sharp stab of fear, a new, daunting challenge that eclipsed all the technical hurdles I'd overcome. I was here, yes, but what now? How do I stop it? How do I change the past without irrevocably damaging the future? Or worse, making things even more catastrophic? The film Back to the Future had made it look so simple. Just avoid a dance. Slug Biff. Make a dad more confident. My problem was a parasitic, manipulative force that had systematically dismantled my life. I looked at the warehouse around me, a temporary haven. I needed to move the DeLorean, hide it, and formulate a plan. My hands, still trembling, reached for the console, the controls for the temporal displacement unit glowing faintly. I hadn't thought beyond the jump. Honestly, I didn't expect it to actually work, but now I was here and, well, now it was knowing what to do with the second chance it had given me. The immediate priority was the DeLorean itself. It was a beacon, an anomaly that screamed time travel to anyone who knew its iconic silhouette. Leaving it in plain sight, even in a derelict warehouse, was an unthinkable risk. I had to secure it, make it disappear without a trace. My mind raced, fueled by the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I needed to get it out of this easily accessible space. My eyes scanned the warehouse for any potential exits. A large, rusted roll-up door at the far end caught my attention. It looked like it hadn't been opened in years, but with a bit of leverage, I might be able to force it. I also took a moment to pat down my pockets, ensuring I hadn't brought anything overtly anachronistic that could be easily lost or discovered. My current clothing, while from 2025, was generic enough not to immediately stand out. Finally, I retrieved a small heavy-duty crowbar I had come across in the warehouse. With a grim determination, I approached the roll-up door. I was on the cusp now of potentially setting the stage for a future where her shadow never loomed. The creak of the old metal, loud in the silence, was the sound of my first tangible step towards reclaiming my life. The crowbar groaned, then shrieked as I leveraged it against the rusted lock mechanism of the warehouse door. With a final desperate heave, the bolt finally gave way with a deafening crack. The roll-up door, surprisingly light once unfettered, scraped upward, revealing a narrow, overgrown alleyway bathed in moonlight. I quickly guided the DeLorean out, its tires crunching softly on the gravel and weeds. My eyes darted around. To my left, the alley dead-ended against a brick wall. To my right, it opened onto a dimly lit street, a few blocks away from what looked like a residential area. This wouldn't do. I needed a deeper hiding spot, somewhere truly isolated. After a few tense minutes of driving slowly through deserted back streets, I found it, an abandoned, overgrown lot, nestled between a defunct lumberyard and a crumbling factory. Tall, skeletal trees and thick bushes provided a natural screen. I carefully maneuvered the DeLorean deep into the foliage, pulling branches and weeds over its sleek form until it was completely obscured. No one would stumble upon it here. Not unless they were actively looking for something, and even then, it would be a challenge. I took a quick last glance at the hidden DeLorean, thinking it all was oddly similar to the movie in a strange way. With the DeLorean hidden, the immediate overwhelming rush of relief began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard knot of anxiety in my stomach. The true challenge now presented itself, my other self. It was out there, somewhere in this 2009 Rochester, likely asleep, oblivious to the temporal paradox now hurtling towards him. The sheer absurdity of the situation almost made me laugh, a hollow, bitter sound. I, a broken man from 2025, was now the architect of my own salvation, and the first step involved confronting me. The paradox of intervention, the immediate, primal urge was to storm his apartment, wake him up, and scream every single detail about how to avoid her.